Prologue. A group of children hold hands in a circle around a blindfolded child in the center. The blindfold has painted eyes that appear intense and red-rimmed. As the children dance and chant a song about the circle's power to foresee the future, they each shout phrases, but only the blindfolded child seems to hear them. She begins to shout ominous prophecies, including warnings of destruction, betrayal, and doom. Suddenly, a fierce wind erupts from her, scattering the children and leaving only darkness and the blindfold with its haunting eyes. This vision is recorded in B. Farseer's dream journal. In Chapter 1, B flees through a forest, but is soon caught by Dwalia and her followers. Disoriented from passing through a skill pillar, B attempts to hide and briefly fights her captors, injuring Reppin before being beaten and tied up. As she listens to Dwalia's conversation, B learns they intend to use her as leverage and overhears disturbing dreams from the captors, hinting at destruction. Despite her injuries, B's determination to escape grows, and she begins gnawing on her bindings. She finds a candle made by her mother, giving her hope her father may be nearby. In Chapter 2, Fitz struggles with exhaustion from using the skill to heal dragon-touched children, pushing his limits as other malformed Rain Wilders seek healing. General Rapskull accuses Amber of theft, but Queen Malta supports her, diffusing the tension. Fitz's healing continues unintentionally, restoring Lant and Perseverance, but leaving him further weakened. Fitz dreams of an encounter with a dragon who interrogates him about his purpose, and he confesses his desire for revenge against the servants. Later, Fitz and his companions plan to leave Kelsingra discreetly, aiming to preserve goodwill and secure safe passage for their journey south. In Chapter 3, B. Farseer suffers at the hands of Dwalia and her group, facing cruelty and control. An attempt to escape fails, with Ilaria brutally recapturing her. Kerf, temporarily kind, is once again manipulated by Vendelier's magic to obey Dwalia, who orchestrates the group's movements with an iron grip. Dwalia decides to use a dangerous portal marked with forbidden runes, ignoring B's warnings. As each character is drawn into the stone, B cries out for her father, but her voice goes unheard. She is ultimately pulled into darkness, forced to face whatever dangers lie ahead. In Chapter 4, B and her group, including Dwalia, Ilaria, and Vendelier, are trapped in a stone prison after a failed escape. Tensions rise as they struggle with panic and fear. B tries to find a way out, discovering a crack through which light enters. The group works together to enlarge the opening, with Kerf taking a lead role. B eventually escapes, finding herself in the ruins of an ancient palace in Chalkid. As she breathes fresh air, the others struggle to follow, and B considers fleeing, knowing she is now free, though isolated and vulnerable. In Chapter 5, Prince FitzChivalry Farseer meets with the Keepers, who offer their support in his battle against the Servants of the Whites and give him gifts including Dragon Silver, a powerful substance from Hebe Rapskull's dragon. Fitz conceals the Dragon Silver and reflects on its possible use. Later, Fitz discusses his meeting with Rapskull, who shares suspicions about the servant's role in the destruction of dragons. Fitz, the Fool, and Lady Amber discuss the significance of these revelations and the implications for their quest. They speculate on the servant's motives and the mystery surrounding the dragon's extinction. In Chapter 6, Fitz grapples with troubling dreams linked to the return of Beloved's catalyst and decides to separate the White Prophet from his catalyst. He struggles with the overwhelming skill current in Kelsingra. Fitz and the Fool discuss the dangers of skill, silver, and their plans to infiltrate Clerres. The Fool reflects on painful memories from his time there, including his past with Prilkop and the servants. They talk about B's fate, with Fitz determined to destroy those who harmed her. Emotionally drained, they end the night haunted by their past and their unresolved pain. In Chapter 7, B. Farseer faces hunger and isolation in the ruins of Shaltid. She scavenges for food, avoids predatory children, and is caught stealing bread, leading to her arrest. Mistaken for a runaway slave, she is told she'll be auctioned unless claimed. Desperate, B hopes for rescue but feels trapped. Her situation worsens when she is sold to a group led by Dwalia and Vendelier, who controls Kerf's mind. Despite her anger and fear, B tries to understand Vendelier's power while learning to guard her own mind. She remains cautious, sensing her survival depends on maintaining control over her thoughts. In Chapter 8, Fitz learns that the Tarman ship has arrived, marking the continuation of his journey. He reflects on his freedom compared to Dutiful's constrained life. Fitz is informed that Tintalia has returned, and he asks her about the servants who took his daughter, Nettle. Tintalia reveals she knows little, but Fitz learns Icefire is alive. As he plans his revenge, Fitz arranges his limited supplies, including poisons and explosives. He shares his strategy with the Fool, Spark, and others, discussing the potential use of fire pots to destroy the Four. Fitz prepares for the dangerous mission ahead. In Chapter 9, Fitz and his group arrive at Kelsingra aboard the Tarman, a sentient live ship that recognizes Fitz as being claimed by Verity. After receiving gifts from the Keepers, they embark toward Trahaug, with the crew taking a break and learning the old language of Clerres. Fitz reflects on his growing bond with the crew and his troubled thoughts about the past. The group faces the turbulent rain-wild river, and Fitz contemplates his fears and his sense of duty. The Fool struggles with his past, revealing painful memories, and Fitz prepares a way for the Fool to escape if necessary. In Chapter 10, Fitz struggles with his connection to the skill, almost losing himself as Chade pulls him deeper. He resists, seeking Nettle's help, and is eventually separated from Chade. The Fool, witnessing Fitz's distress, advises him not to succumb to Chade's influence. Fitz, grieving the loss of his daughter Bee's gift, reluctantly shares her journal with the Fool. They read her dreams together, bonding over their shared pain. Fitz's desire for vengeance grows stronger. Later, Fitz reflects on his journey, contemplating how to navigate the complex relationships within the crew and his mission. In Chapter 11, Farseer reflects on a haunting childhood dream involving candles, a crow, and cryptic warnings about death, destruction, and the fate of a child. On her sea voyage, she deals with seasickness, Dwalia's illness, and observes the ship's passengers, including slaves and merchants. Bee secretly hopes to escape, observing Vindelier and Kerf, and senses Vindelier's subtle manipulation of Dwalia. Vindelier shares his dream of finding Bee, whom he believes to be the unexpected son, central to a greater destiny. Bee plots her escape and begins to consider whether Vindelier could be an ally, but her hope is tainted by the painful reality of her past. In Chapter 12, Fitz and his companions arrive in Trahaug and meet Captain Leftrin, Althea Vestrit, and Brashen Trell. Fitz encounters Paragon, a sentient live ship with a figurehead resembling his own face, which causes tension between Fitz and the ship. Amber discusses Paragon's unpredictable nature, and the group prepares to leave. Fitz reflects on his mistakes and growing sense of incompetence, fearing he's no longer fit for their mission. He confides in the Fool about his fears of failure, and the Fool reassures him that they are in this together, despite the looming dangers. In Chapter 13, Bee, Kerf, and Vindelier are aboard a ship, trying to escape Dwalia's control. Bee struggles with Vindelier's unwavering loyalty to Dwalia and the belief that she is the unexpected son, who must be controlled to prevent world-altering changes. As tensions rise, Bee's frustration grows, and she questions Vindelier's motivations. In a storm, the ship faces a violent tilt, and Bee seizes the moment to attempt to kill Dwalia. However, her attack fails as Kerf intervenes, and Bee is thrown aside. Alone in the dark, Bee decides to escape, fearing both Dwalia and the ship's imminent sinking. In Chapter 14, Amber accelerates Paragon's transformation using silver, unlocking its dragon nature. The crew is disturbed, especially Althea and Brashen, by Paragon's growing power and the revelation of his true identity. Amber admits her motive, to use Paragon to reach Clerres and rescue her believed to be alive daughter, Bee. The crew grapples with Amber's actions, feeling betrayed. Paragon confirms the bargain, revealing his own goals for becoming a dragon. Amber shares Bee's dream journal, revealing clues about Bee's survival, including a vision involving candles that suggests Bee is still alive. Fitz is filled with hope and a renewed belief in rescuing his daughter. In Chapter 15, Farseer, desperate to escape, offers her services to trader Acriel, who takes her under her wing. Bee begins to prove her worth, fulfilling tasks and learning to serve as a scribe. However, her reunion with her former captors, including Dwalia and Kerf, disrupts her fragile safety. After a violent confrontation, Acriel is killed, and Bee is forcibly dragged away by her captors. Despite her attempts to resist and alert others, she is controlled by Dwalia, who forces Bee to follow her through the city, facing danger and humiliation. Bee struggles to maintain hope for freedom. In Chapter 16, tensions rise as the Paragon nears Divvytown amidst dwindling supplies and the threat of pirates. Amber tries to keep peace while Paragon behaves oddly, prompting concern. Many crew members abandon ship, and Lant is tasked with protecting Amber and Spark during their shore trip. Paragon's strange interaction with Vivacia intensifies as he challenges her memories and urges her to embrace her dragon form. The ship's bond deepens, with Paragon requesting the return of Boy O. The chapter ends with Amber and the crew heading toward the captain's stateroom, uncertain about what comes next. In Chapter 17, Lady Rosemary warns King Rain and Queen Malta about the dangers of generosity and suggests a healing center in the Six Duchies due to the influence of the skill. Meanwhile, Dwalia, Vindelier, and the narrator flee Soulsby. Dwalia forces Vindelier to use magic to control a fortune teller, which fails until the narrator secretly channels their Farseer magic. The group tracks the ship, Asterisk the Sea, Rose Asterisk, where Vindelier is empowered by a potion. The narrator confronts Vindelier's mind and realizes their shared history, but Dwalia insists they board the ship to depart for Clerres. In Chapter 18, tensions escalate as Wintrow's family confronts Kennitson, the son of Kennet, who insists on joining the Paragon's voyage. Despite Wintrow's objections, Paragon demands his presence, evoking memories of Kennet. Queen Etta expresses anger, while Brashen urges separation to prevent danger. Paragon reacts violently, threatening to drown them. Meanwhile, Vivacia joins Paragon, asserting her right to Kennitson and announcing her intent to follow him to Clerres. Fitz, torn by responsibility, reflects on his inner turmoil and the power of the silver. Amid confusion, the group remains divided, unsure of their next steps. In Chapter 19, Lucius confronts Beloved, Aluric, claiming to be the White Prophet, whose disruptive actions lead to Lucius being stoned. Lucius recalls his time with Dwalia and Vindelier, reflecting on their manipulative and betrayal-filled relationships. As tensions rise, Lucius begins to explore his own powers. After a violent encounter with Dwalia, Lucius realizes the dangers of using his abilities. He uncovers troubling memories about Vindelier's past, including horrifying scenes involving torture and Dwalia's sinister intentions. This chapter sets the stage for growing conflicts, self-discovery, and shifting power dynamics. In Chapter 20, Fitz grapples with the uncertainty surrounding his daughter Bee's fate. Tintaglia, a dragon, arrives seeking vengeance against the Clerres, blaming them for crimes against dragons. Fitz is torn as Tintaglia grants him permission to act before her, but Rapskal reveals their priority mission is protecting dragon eggs. The group arrives at Queen Etta's palace, where tensions rise as Rapskal discusses the dragon's wrath and their plans for vengeance. Fitz fears Bee's safety as the dragons prepare to strike. Queen Etta warns him to act swiftly to save his daughter before the dragons destroy Clerres. In Chapter 21, the dragons depart at dawn, leaving Vivacia determined to visit Others Island and possibly Clerres. Sorkor arrives with Kennitson, the pirate prince, and a young attendant, Barla. Tension rises as Brashen insists Kennitson learn the ropes like any other crew member, despite his privileged background. Sorkor, acknowledging Brashen's approach, steps back. Meanwhile, Fitz talks with a fool who shares dreams about Bee's survival, though Fitz struggles to believe. The fool insists Bee is alive and speaks cryptically of a shared dream involving candles, paths, and a bee. Fitz remains uncertain of the dream's significance. In Chapter 22, Bee Farseer contemplates her guilt and grief as she learns of Chade's death and connects with Nettle. Bee feels the weight of her family's burdens and reflects on her experiences with Paragon, who shares Kennitson's traumatic past. Meanwhile, Kennitson's growing affection for Spark concerns Lant. Bee receives distressing news that the fool dreams she is alive, sparking a mix of hope and confusion. Fitz, in turn, struggles with his emotional turmoil as he tries to connect with Bee through the skill, but his efforts fail, and he is overwhelmed by grief over Chade's death. In Chapter 23, Dwalia and the narrator arrive in Clerres, where Dwalia's glamour fades, revealing her true form. Tensions rise as guards question them but allow passage. Dwalia demands a meeting with Symph and Felody, but they are angry about her failure to bring back the unexpected son. Dwalia claims she tracked Beloved, who was killed by FitzChivalry Farseer, and presents the narrator as the unexpected son. The four react with fury, and Dwalia is punished with 40 lashes. As Dwalia is taken away, the narrator realizes their path to this moment was inevitable, filled with lost choices and consequences. In Chapter 24, Capra detains Bee and escorts her through a vast compound, revealing a regimented world of child prophets, dream documentation, and rigorous white teachings. Bee witnesses Capra's meticulous system for tracking prophetic dreams, including warnings of a possible destroyer. Capra questions Bee's identity and heritage, probing for ties to the unexpected son and any hidden powers. Bee pretends innocence, deflecting inquiries while contemplating her options for survival or escape. Capra hints at her authority over Bee's future, presenting the child with a grim perspective on her new life and potential roles within the White Prophet hierarchy. In Chapter 25, Capra leads Bee through a magical room and has her recount her life story, including her kidnapping by Dwalia and the destruction of Withyewoods. Capra questions Bee about her connections to FitzChivalry and the unexpected son, but Bee deflects suspicion. Capra arranges for a scribe to record Bee's account, but tensions rise as Symph demands copies of the pages, leading to a dispute. Capra accuses Felody, Symph, and Coltree of triggering dangerous events, and Bee is eventually locked back in her cell, uncertain of what will happen next. In Chapter 26, Tom manages his responsibilities at Withyewoods, reflecting on his bond with Night Eyes. Aboard Paragon, Althea and the crew prepare to infiltrate Clerres under the guise of travelers. A mishap with Chade's explosive pots unveils Tom's hidden silver stash, stirring tension with Amber. Paragon reassures Tom of Amber's shared resolve to rescue Bee. Tom and the Fool reconcile, recalling past journeys and Amber's painful experiences in Clerres. The Fool recounts his and Prilkop's imprisonment and the hardships they endured, strengthening Tom's commitment to their mission and his determination to rescue Bee. In Chapter 27, Captain Osfor warns merchants Clifton and Rosen and Bellady about the instability of the live ship Kendry, advising them to use Ophelia instead. Bee remains captive, enduring her captors, Sympha and Dwalia, who manipulate her into a dark cell. Sympha reveals a cylinder of serpent essence, risking her life to obtain it. Using the essence, Bee taps into newfound powers, enabling her to retaliate. She injures Symph and subdues Vindelier and Dwalia. Finally, Bee escapes her cell, hides her weapons, and secures a place in her original cell, preparing for the next step in her plan. In Chapter 28, Fitz, after a dream of his mother's guidance, awakens anchored near Clerres and contacts Dutiful, Nettle, and Thick, who share family news and encouragement. He feels Vindelier's unsettling mental force, but resists it. Brashen informs him that Amber and crew members have disappeared, and Fitz deduces that Amber likely drugged the crew to carry out her own plan to rescue Bee. As he prepares, Spark gives him supplies, including Clerres seed for alertness. Fitz realizes Vindelier sensed their approach and that Amber took a tube of silver, potentially changing the course of their mission. In Chapter 29, Bee struggles with the mystery of Beloved's disappearance while facing interrogation and suspicion from her captors. Despite limited freedoms, she is kept under watch by the Four. Meanwhile, Fitz and his companions arrive at Clerres, hoping to find Amber, who is searching for Bee alone. As they navigate the city, they hear of Symph's death, which has thrown the populace into mourning and confusion. Fitz suspects the Fool may be responsible. Purr suggests using Motley, the Crow, to search the castle, but she flies away without confirmation, leaving them uncertain of their next move. In Chapter 30, Fitz and his companions arrive in the bustling city near the castle, preparing to enter. They discuss their plan to meet Amber and find Bee, with Fitz worried about the dangers ahead. They learn that Amber, who is hiding her regained sight, may have gone ahead on her own to rescue Bee. As they make their way toward the castle, a sudden commotion erupts when the gates open, revealing that one of the Four, Symph, has died. The crowd is in mourning and the group's entry is delayed. Fitz grows anxious, fearing the Fool's involvement and what may have happened to Bee. In Chapter 31, Princess Nettle instructs Steward Dixon to secure her father's and Sister Bee's rooms. In the prison, Bee contemplates her fate as Prilkop hints at Bee's involvement in killing Dwalia. Meanwhile, the Butterfly Man attempts an escape but is captured. Capra, injured, orders Prilkop to be imprisoned in Dwalia's old cell. Bee feels powerless as Prilkop is shackled and led away. Later, a strange bird appears in her cell, speaking cryptic messages and urging Bee to inform Perseverance about a way out being a way in. Despite her confusion, Bee tries to understand the bird's warning. In Chapter 32, the group waits anxiously under the hot sun, uncertain of their next steps. They take a break at an inn, hearing rumors about Symph's death and Dwalia's return, but no news of Bee. When Motley returns with a cryptic message about Bee being stuck, they set out for the castle. After navigating the rocky shores, they find a waste trench and decide to enter the castle through it. The group slogs through filth and darkness, eventually finding a room with a dead guard. They move quickly, determined to rescue Bee despite the growing risks. In Chapter 33, Bee escapes her cell and sets a fire to destroy the scroll libraries, ensuring no one can trace her steps. She carefully sabotages the scroll rooms, spilling oil and igniting it, with the flames spreading quickly. As she feels the heat of the fire, she contemplates the consequences of being captured versus choosing death. Despite the danger, she presses on, determined to create a future free from the servants. The fire intensifies, and Bee narrowly escapes the collapsing rooms, finally making her way to the stairs, driven by the urgency to flee before it's too late. In Chapter 34, Fitz and his group find the Fool alive in a cell despite his failed poisoning attempt. The Fool reveals that Bee is held in the upper cells with Prilkop. They plan to use a secret tunnel to reach her, but it's blocked. Spark picks a lock to access a new area where they find Prilkop and other prisoners. The group moves quickly, avoiding guards as they search for Bee. Fitz and Pear fight their way through smoke from a fire and find Bee alive but scarred. As they prepare to escape, they encounter a welcoming party led by a man named Vindelier. In Chapter 35, Bee and her group face a tense escape as the castle burns. Fitz, under the influence of Vindelier's magic, is protected by Bee's friends as they struggle to flee. They discuss potential escape routes, including an old secret tunnel, but find it compromised. Fitz decides to stay behind to distract the guards, leaving Bee and her group to escape. He urges Beloved to protect Bee, despite his emotional turmoil. Per, wanting to help Fitz, stays behind as well. The group seeks safety, but Bee is left shaken, realizing the cost of their escape. In Chapter 36, Fitz, struggling with his mission and injury, sets explosives to delay their pursuers, but is interrupted by Pear and Spark. They escape an ambush, with Bee using her skill to fend off attackers. Trapped under a collapsing ceiling, they work to free themselves. Bee reveals her role in Cora's death, and the group inches toward freedom. Bee ventures down a dark tunnel with Pear, discovering an old guard post. Meanwhile, the group battles the rising tide and fire, with Bee warning Fitz about the whites who may betray them. The chapter ends with a sudden explosion. In Chapter 37, Fitz and the Fool are trapped under rubble after an explosion, with Bee unconscious in the Fool's arms. The Fool is injured and struggling, and Fitz, unable to move, urges him to save Bee. As the fire and water rise around them, Fitz forces a healing connection through the skill, transferring his strength to the Fool to help him carry Bee to safety. Despite his fading strength, Fitz seals the Fool's injuries. He ensures Bee will survive and finally lets go of the connection, accepting his own death. The chapter ends with Fitz joining Night Eyes in the afterlife. In Chapter 38, Gerda, the White Prophet, stays with Kulena in a mountain village while seeking her catalyst. Bee, recovering from an injury, travels with Beloved through a flooded tunnel, reflecting on her father's death and learning her niece's name is Hope. The group faces danger as they approach the ship Paragon, which is under attack. Bee struggles with the decision to use a dangerous silver substance, but ultimately hands it over to a burned man Kennitson, who hopes it will help save the ship. The situation worsens, and they are forced to jump into the water as Paragon sinks. Dragons emerge, exacting vengeance on their enemies, while Bee and the others struggle to survive. In Chapter 39, the group mourns their losses after a devastating battle with dragons. Kennitson's death weighs heavily on them. Boyo, severely burned, is tended to by Brashen and Pear. Bee heals Boyo's wounds, though the process is exhausting. Rapskull, a mysterious red man, arrives and speaks casually about their losses, including Kennitson and FitzChivalry. Vivacia, a live ship, is spotted nearby. Pear explains that Vivacia and Rapskull have come to take revenge with the dragons. Beloved, feeling defeated, ventures into the hills alone, hoping to find a tunnel. When he returns, the group prepares to leave, but Bee rejects taking anything from the wreckage. In Chapter 40, Fitz struggles to survive after being trapped in the wreckage of Clerres' castle. He senses the silver's magic affecting him as he escapes and emerges into daylight, only to find the ruins of the castle and the departure of Vivacia. He is left reeling with despair and questions. Fitz eventually meets Prilkop, who informs him that B, Beloved, and others are gone, and that Clerres has fallen. Fitz is also told of Paragon's transformation into dragons. After a tense conversation, Fitz confronts Capra, killing her in a swift act of vengeance for B and Beloved. In Chapter 41, B. Farseer continues her journey aboard the Vivasha, helping Boy O recover from severe burns using her powers, despite warnings from Beloved. The ship manipulates her, revealing the cost of her involvement. B reflects on her past, including her father's letters and the deep bond he shared with Beloved. Tensions rise when B confronts Beloved about his role in her father's life and the emotional manipulation she feels. She accuses him of using her father and causing harm. Beloved, though hurt, explains his actions, but B insists he is not a substitute for her father. In Chapter 42, B uncovers a scorched letter revealing the servant's slaughter of dragons and serpents after a northern disaster. The letter hints at the dragon's vengeance and the Four's longevity. After caring for the surviving whites, B leaves Clerres for a small farm inland, facing hunger, injury, and isolation. On a miserable voyage aboard the ship, the Dancer, B struggles but manipulates the crew into favor. Upon arriving in the dreary town of Furnick, B finds a ruined elderling city. Haunted by memories of betrayal, they encounter hostile locals and use their wit to kill attackers before finding a skill pillar and preparing to leave. In Chapter 43, Carol confesses to Nettle about disobeying orders at Aslavjal. B struggles with her pain and emotional distance from others, particularly Amber and the Fool. Vivasha refuses to dock at the Pirate Isles, and many of the crew leave. As they approach the Rainwild River, B reflects on her past. In Bingtown, Vivasha's arrival sparks controversy, and the Traders' Council is upset by the live ship's transformation. B, Amber, and others meet Lant, who shares his tale of survival. Amber's mother, Ronica, offers them shelter, while tensions rise over the Council's decisions and the future of the live ships. In Chapter 44, the crew of Vivasha sails toward Trahag, with B growing closer to the crew. As Vivasha reaches the river's edge, her figurehead drinks silver, signaling her transformation. Her mast crashes, and the ship's wreckage floats away, while a large silver dragon, Vivasha, struggles to rise and then soars into the air, joyfully flying with Kendry, another dragon. A councilwoman arrives to stop their transformation, but the crew ignores her warnings. Later, the ship arrives in Kelsingra, where B meets members of her sister Nettle's coterie. The celebration is overwhelming, and B is urged to leave as the coterie prepares to take her back to Buckkeep. In Chapter 45, B adjusts to court life after her father's death, dealing with royal duties and formalities. She reconnects with Caution, who becomes her maid and meets her niece, Nettle. B's skilling causes unrest, prompting Nettle to suggest using elf bark. B, feeling isolated, finds solace in an evening ride, where she shares a moment with Pear. Later, B meets Thick, a simple man who teaches her the art of skill music. They bond over shared memories and a quiet, magical experience. B returns to her room feeling more connected and at peace than she has in a long time. In Chapter 46, Fitz and Night Eyes find themselves outside the skill pillar in a quarry, unsure of how long they've been lost. Despite feeling weak and disoriented, Fitz recalls memories of Verity and elderling carvings. He rests, catches a porcupine, and contemplates his past with Starling. As he recalls Verity's advice to carve a dragon, Night Eyes urges him to act quickly. Fitz reflects on his bond with the wolf, his desire to return to B, and his struggle to accept the need for change. Later, Fitz wakes to find Night Eyes gone, leaving him alone. In Chapter 47, B bonds with Thick, while Spark warns her of his inability to keep secrets. B learns of Nettle's surveillance and receives a vision from Night Eyes revealing that her father, Fitz, is dying and needs help. She tells Queen Ketrican, who agrees to assist. Nettle objects, but B gathers help from Beloved and Purr for a journey to save Fitz. As Fitz weakens, he gives Pear directives, and B reflects on her father's actions and love. Meanwhile, B records Fitz's memories while he struggles to finish carving his stone wolf. Fitz continues to deteriorate. In Chapter 48, Fitz battles his declining health while carving a wolf, symbolizing his bond with Night Eyes and his imminent death. Despite his companions' concern, including B, the Fool, and Ketrican, Fitz continues his task, resisting help. Nettle arrives, bringing news of his impending death, and Fitz makes final requests for Bee's care, entrusting the Fool to be her father. He reflects on his memories, including his past with the Fool and the presence of his family. As he prepares for death, Fitz struggles with letting go, surrounded by those who care for him, yet feeling detached from his fading life. In chapter 49, Bee reflects on her father's complex relationship with the Fool, pondering their history of love, betrayal, and doubt. She observes her father's deteriorating state as he lies on the stone wolf surrounded by family. Nettle and others attempt to offer memories to the wolf, hoping to ease his passing. Bee struggles with the tension, knowing that her father's true connection was with the Fool, not her. As the Fool finally approaches her father, a powerful moment unfolds. The wolf awakens, embodying the essence of her father and the Fool's bond, before leaping into the night, leaving the family in stunned awe. In chapter 50, Kettricken leads the group through the mountains, despite Nettle's concerns. Dutiful returns to Queen Eliania's side with his coterie, while Integrity, Hap, Spark, and Pear remain. The journey begins, with the group exchanging light-hearted banter as they travel. The road is smoother than expected, and Fitz senses the echoes of past travelers. Purr, however, feels something unsettling in the forest and urges caution, noticing something stalking them. Kettricken remains calm, and the group continues, aware of the strange presence but undeterred. The chapter ends with tension rising as they move through the forest.